This is Talkback 721-1290 or 1-800-568-5309.
This is Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290 and 98.3 FM. KGVO, Missoula's news and weather station.
Hey, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is the Thursday, November 7th, 2024 edition of Talkback. Talkback this morning is brought to you by Y West Storage out of the Y on Two Smokes Way. If you need storage, here's their number. Put this in your phone so you don't lose it. 406-510-0590. Y West is making room for you. Phillips Janitorial does both cleaning for homes and businesses. If you need it done, give them a call. No job too big or small for Phillips Janitorial. 406-260-6617. 123 Seamless Gutters. They offer top-notch customer service, and they'll take care of your gutters, so of course you don't have to. 406-240-2669, protecting the foundation of your future. And by Harrington Surgical Supply, where you can feel confident in Harrington's discreet and knowledgeable guidance on a multitude of products and medical supplies.
The views and opinions expressed on Talkback are not those of the staff, management, or advertisers.
Okay, good to have you along, ladies and gentlemen. It is Talkback for this Thursday. That is Mr. Nick Questionson. Good morning, Mr. Nick.
Good morning.
Are your fingers tired? You had a very busy couple of days.
It was just fine.
Yeah, with open phones yesterday, it just went crazy. And it was the post-election comments yesterday. Yes, and Bob Seidenschwartz joining us here this morning. How are you, sir?
I just got up. Was there an election? I put myself in a coma about 3 months ago.
Yeah. I just want you to sit down.
Okay, I'm taking a deep breath.
Just don't get upset or alarmed. But Donald Trump won, going away, and now there's the
And America's still here?
Yeah, America's still here.
Oh my.
Yes, I
haven't seen any fires.
Yes,
I haven't seen people jumping out the window. I have experienced personally,
yes,
and through numerous friends, a great deal of angst.
Oh yeah,
and just like I'm sick to my stomach. I can't eat. I said, well, I'm hungry.
Well, let's put it this way.
I'm going to make myself some dinner.
Let's put it this way. There would have been angst and anxiety on either side,
exactly.
Because there hasn't been this stark a choice between candidates for a long time. And when you've got Trump on one side and then Harris on the other, both coming quite literally from different worlds,
yes,
and offering different ways to govern, and no one really knew how it was going to come out.
You know, the pollsters again, they got it wrong. I don't know that anybody, even picking Trump, had predicted the degree of popular vote, and of course what that then reflected as far as the Electoral College. So it's, there were some immediate family members that were absolutely sure that the pollsters, had got it wrong, and what they were looking at was right, and somebody else was saying exact opposite. So what does it mean going forward for both parties in terms of how do you look at and assess what worked and what didn't work?
Well, I will tell you this, what had it working here was Nick had the great idea of just having open phones yesterday, and the phone lines were absolutely jammed for 2 full hours. People wanting to vent, talk about good things, bad things. We had several successful candidates who called in and shared their experiences. So it was a great show yesterday.
So, and right now, did you guys have a conversation about the House has yet to be decided?
Right.
As of this morning, that was still up in the air. California still, by the fact and how they count their votes, tends to be late.
Yeah.
So there's some districts there that yet to be, decided, and several other states. So, personally, and this is everybody's got an opinion, I have said I didn't care who got elected, as long as whoever was the winner, did not have control of the Senate and the Congress. The founders loved tension. They saw a reason. Now, people would be like, no, but they don't do that. This is just my own opinion, folks. Write in if you want to, but that tension is...
The dynamic tension.
Is important for keeping things from getting too unbalanced to one extreme or the other.
Although it does make it easier for majority and minority leaders when there's a clear majority and minority, then they can say, okay, here's my role. Here's how we're going to work this.
In theory, yes. In reality, even amongst those who have won, there's differences of opinion of what we can do or what we should do.
Right.
So, it's a nice, juicy apple. We'll see what it's going to look like.
All right. Well, now we are going to take a quick commercial break because, we'll explain what's going on.
Yeah, and
here.
I have a story that I read by our own reporter, Rob Cheney, that I thought was and should be of interest to Montana.
You bet. We're going to come right back, by the way, 721-1290. By the way, it is open phones right now. If you have a question or a comment, you'd like to make a comment about what's going on in the world, that we talked about it a lot yesterday. But in the 9 o'clock hour, we'll have guests here in the studio talking about what's going on with the stock market. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Policies will the Trump administration bring to the table that should be of interest to you?
All right. We're going to come right back. Phone lines are open at 721-1290, 1-800-568-5309. Peter Christian here. The questions over there. Bob Seidenschwartz here in the studio. And hopefully you when we return after this.
Sunny and somewhat mild the next couple of days thanks to a ridge of high pressure that should last into Saturday. Daytime highs reaching in the low to mid 40s. Although with clear skies, mornings will be cold with lows down into the 20s. Saturday will bring increasing high clouds with a 50% chance of rain by Saturday night. And temperatures will warm, so that chance of valley snow showers has disappeared in the latest forecast. Just rain expected now Sunday with highs near 50. More active weather will persist through next week. With the Town Square forecast, I'm Dennis Pratt.
Okay, welcome back to Talk Back, everybody. We're okay. Now we were going to have a guest today, but now we are going to have open phones with Bob, right?
For a little bit, because we have some folks coming in that we've been doing a review of what the economic policies of the Trump administration would look like and how that is going to differ, which I think is one of the principal reasons why he is going to be sitting where he is.
And a lot of people were very pleased to look at their portfolios just in mid and post election day, thinking, "Ooh, look at this."
It's not what I did for you yesterday; it's what you're going to do for me going forward, Peter.
Okay.
Yeah, but that was a big day, no question.
Right. Let's get Dave on the line. Dave, good morning, sir. You are on Talk Back. What's on your mind? And thanks for being first today. Go ahead.
Sure. I'm a nut on history, and it bothers me when I look at what people say about history, and I, in my view, get it wrong. And I'd like to talk about Ukraine, the history of Ukraine for a moment. In February 2014, little green men invaded Crimea. Of course, they were Russians, and the government of Ukraine wanted to go to war with them, but Obama, who was president at the time, said, your T-64 tanks are all broke down, your army is in shatters, you're going to lose whatever good you have in your army. So I'll get you foreign aid, and we'll build your army back up. And he did that. He got foreign aid, and they sent in advisors. They were working on the tanks and building up the army. Now, some Republicans say that didn't happen, but it did. It's fact, historical fact. He left office, and Donald Trump came into power, and Congress gave some more money to Ukraine, and Trump broke the law and refused to spend it. He was trying to blackmail the the new prime minister to give dirt on Joe Biden, and he broke the law there. And eventually he relented and sent 13, and I repeat 13, not 1,000, not 2,000, but 13 shoulder-launched missiles to Ukraine. Obama had refused to do that because he believed that they would fall in the hands of the Russians, and he didn't want the technology to go there. And that's the historical fact as I remember it. And I'm bothered when people are trying to misrepresent history.
Dave, so my question to you is, I actually agree. What had happened is what you're recounting correctly, but it will not change anything. So the most important thing for me is, what will Trump signal? And I ask your opinion about his support, not just with words, but with the assistance that will still be required to fight Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Because from a foreign policy perspective, you got two just major areas, of course, with Israel and with Ukraine. And I know when you did your hotspots with your dad and Michael that they covered this. So I am very interested and wait to see what Trump actually does regarding Ukraine. What are your thoughts?
Well, he has said he's going to end the war in a day or so before he even comes.
Yeah, that's hyperbole. I mean, let's get past that point. What do what do you think should be done from your perspective in terms of going forward?
Well, North Korea has set troops there. A couple, 10,000. They may send 100,000 yet. Iran is part of the team, and maybe China will join it. The Russians fighting in Ukraine are fighting against Americans. Just ask them. And it's time for Americans to if we wanted to stop this war, the easiest way would be for us to come out and say, we got 3,000 Bradley fighting machines laying around getting rusted. We're going to send them to Ukraine. We're going to send 2,000 tanks. We're going to send F-16s. We're going to flood the place with old equipment. And Russia, you're not going to win. I mean, with all that equipment, or if you do, it's going to cost you, 1 million lives. Maybe you should sit down and have peace talks. So, that's my view of how to end the war in a day. Convince Russia that they can't win the war.
Okay. Peter,
all right.
Thoughts?
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for the call. You guys are way above this, way above my non-military mind. So,
and this is a geopolitical decision, of course.
Yeah.
I look at this and I think that Trump has right from the very beginning an important signal that he sends to North Korea, China, Iran, and anybody else that we don't consider our friends about what his intentions are vis-a-vis Ukraine.
And he's going into it with a mandate.
He's going in with a mandate, and if he's a strong man and the guy that can stop this and get things done, I'm going to watch this very closely. Just as I've stated,
He'll try. Maybe he'll just try to be the hero. All right, let's get to Emmett on the line. Emmett, good morning, sir. You are on Talkback. Go ahead, please. What's on your mind?
Oh, thanks for taking my call. Well, I'm still praising the Lord for the glorious victory. Praising the Lord a lot. I do agree with Bob Seidenswarch. I'm not sorry if I pronounced your name wrong.
No, Emmett, you were perfect.
Thank you. I myself would like, perhaps it's a good idea if, the Republicans don't completely take the House, simply so we can have that tension. I do like that. I voted Republican all the way because I wanted a firewall against Kamala Harris because I thought she would win. Again, the polls got it wrong, probably because they were over-sampling Democrats, and, the media was only talking to Democrats. That's probably what was happening. But, the Lord hasn't given up on our country yet. This is obvious. I will say this. I know and I was praying yesterday at church, it is brash, but our Lord wants us to ask for big things. Since our Lord hasn't given up on this country, if we have a cultural shift maybe to more conservative values, I'd like to ask, is this signals a more cultural shift to more Christian conservative values? Because evangelicals did come out to vote in mass. I don't know what the thing of the Roman Catholics was. Let's pray for revival. I mean, CBN, has initiated a prayer movement of Pray for America. Anyone listening, just pray for revival, that the Holy Spirit would move and that God would heal this nation through prayer, people going to church, repenting of their sins. This can happen. I think the Lord wants this because God hasn't given up in this country yet. So those are my thoughts for this open phone.
All right. Thanks for the call. We're going to come right back. 721-1290 is our number, 1-800-568-5309. The phone lines are open, and it is open phones, but we have special guests coming in at 9. But, hey, whatever's on your mind this morning, Bob is here to share his thoughts as well, his expertise. Nick Christensen's over there taking your phone calls. And we'll be right back, hopefully hearing from you here in just a moment.
The Grizz.
How was your drive to school?
Let me tell you, I had to get my iced coffee first. I just can't seem to put it down. My favorite rapper just announced a tour. My phone was buzzing like crazy. I'm so excited. I had to text all my friends right then to talk about it. Then someone started calling me and...
Let's try that again.
I turned my phone off right away. I never drive distracted.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Small businesses are the heart of America. But you don't have to go it alone. As the nation's largest nonprofit resource of expert business mentoring, SCORE has helped millions of entrepreneurs build their businesses for free. Get the connections, education, and guidance you need with SCORE. We're ready to help. Find a mentor today at SCORE.org.
If you served, we want you to get the health care and benefits you earned. We want you to come to VA.
There's never been a better time to apply. Under a new law called the PACT Act, we've expanded VA care and benefits to millions of people who served and their survivors.
No matter where you served or how long you served, check out va.gov/PACT to learn more about what VA can do for you and your family. Come to VA.
Hey, welcome back to Talk Back. It's Open Phones. Bob Seidenschwartz joining us here in the studio this morning. Nick Christensen is taking your phone calls, producing Talk Back today, and we'd love to have some from you folks if there's something on your mind. We had quite the round of open phones yesterday, but we are going to continue. But you have something very important. You read an interesting article that may have a surprising twist to it.
Yeah, if any of our listeners get on the computer, type in Real Clear Politics. And
very prestigious. Yeah.
It's one of the best educational sources because it covers a number of topics from health to energy, with articles written on contemporary
Dr. John
issues.
Lott has contributed that a lot.
Right. Yeah. It's just a great source. And I always hit the energy section since that's of interest.
Right.
And I'm reading through things, and of course there was an article on Montana. Catches my attention. And I open it up, and the article is expansive in terms of literally the billions of dollars that will be coming into eastern Montana to help them transition from the reduction of coal and what we've seen with coal strip to renewables, other types of technology that could be beneficial for electric power generation, and very well written, very thoughtful, really detailed all the different players who were involved, from Northwest Energy to a number of other corporations to the tribes. What's working, what's not, the cleanup. I mean, it covers it all. And what the implications may be for Montana, especially that area, are fairly substantial. I get to the end of the article, and it's our Rob Cheney.
Wow.
So I'm going to reach out to Rob because we know that Rob is no longer working at the Missoulian.
Right.
I don't know where he is. If anybody does, or if you want to go to Real Clear Politics.
Or maybe if Rob is listening to our program right now, wouldn't that be nice?
Well, if he's not, I'm going to be getting in touch with him because this is a great story to tell that really just brings together the nexus of all these different issues that are going to continue to be a part of decisions that have to be made, the implications. Because while there may be some changes to the, the Inflation Act, as Trump has said that he would do away with it, I'm kind of reading that it's probably not going to do away with it, but there's probably going to be some parts of it.
You might redirect some of that money to other places.
Some of that or take certain parts of it out.
Right.
Yet to be determined, but there's big-time players involved in our own little state.
Yeah.
And the implications for the people living there, as well as the economic opportunities.
Well, if you remember the day that Mr. Biden was sworn in, one of his very first acts was to take the Keystone XL pipeline and tear it up, and this was after. The Trump administration, the previous administration had set it all up. They had the supplies already. It had been cleared. It had been ready to go. And they had, the pipelines, the pipes sitting there. They have the counties all set to receive monies. The huge amount of infrastructure that was going to go in there and help basically save the economies of these counties with the stroke of a pen. It was all gone in an instant.
And with the stroke of a pen, it's all back in an instant.
Yes, but not necessarily the Keystone XL pipeline, because that's all over. All that stuff is gone now.
Well, what's gone, Peter? I mean,
all of the infrastructure that was there is gone because it wasn't going to be used, from what I understand. I could be wrong.
All right, and I don't know enough about that.
Yeah.
But what I have seen immediately, and I urge again, go to Real Clear Politics, put in the energy, just click on that. There's also an article by several energy CEOs.
Oh, cool.
A breath of fresh air.
Yay.
That they did lobby hard for this in terms of supporting Trump. To be expected, as you had others lobbying in the opposite direction. The implication is, wow, instead of decades, in some cases, and staggering amounts of money to get projects approved, to get through the process, they're expecting a much more favorable and inclined type of administration, which I can tell you with liquid natural gas, the moratorium that they put on that probably goes away rather quickly. On the regulatory side, there will be reviews and some rollbacks. Now, it shouldn't be rollbacks at the expense of your public health or from an environmental standpoint, because the energy industry knows they have to work still within that framework. But you're going to see some dramatic changes, I suspect, in terms of project approval. And most importantly, as we've said often on this show, what does it signal to the other major energy producers that are not necessarily your buddies?
Yeah, and adjacent to that is when we had Ryan Zinke called in yesterday, and one of the things that he said about going forward now that he's got another term in Congress is he's going to try to somehow get infrastructure funding into eastern Montana, into those areas that desperately, he said there's over 100 bridges that need to be repaired or replaced.
Right.
Their roadways are crumbling. And the infrastructure, for instance, he used Seeley Lake as a really good example. Seeley Lake can't have any major infrastructure changes because there's no sewer. There's no public water system.
Right.
So there are things that simply have to be done in order for growth to occur in certain parts of our country, of our state, and that has to be solved somehow.
And this is one of the things that I wait to see in terms of the new administration. You want to bring people together.
Right.
Get them jobs. Build out infrastructure for future prosperity.
All right, we're up against a break, and we would love to have your thoughts. We're pontificating here, but we'd love to hear from you. 721-1290 is our number, 1-800-568-5309. Of course, use the KGVO app, and we'll be happy to pass that message along to Bob and our other guests when they come in. We'll be right back after this.
Well, sunny and somewhat mild the next couple of days thanks to a ridge of high pressure that should last into Saturday. Daytime highs reaching in the low to mid 40s. Although with clear skies, mornings will be cold with lows down into the 20s. Saturday will bring increasing high clouds with a 50% chance of rain by Saturday night. And temperatures will warm, so that chance of valley snow showers has disappeared in the latest forecast. Just rain expected now Sunday with highs near 50. More active weather will persist through next week. With a Town Square forecast, I'm Dennis Brad.
This is your captain. We are going to be experiencing some slight turbulence. Please fasten your... Oh, hold on. Just got a video of my cat.
Imagine the pilot of an airplane was as confident as you are texting and driving. Seems kind of crazy when you put it like that.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Hey, welcome back. Talk back rolling right along this morning. We're doing some open phones, at least till 9 o'clock this morning, when special guests will be coming into the studio. Bob Seidenschwartz is here with us, though, from the Montana World Affairs Council on the radio. And we've got Rick standing by. Rick, good morning, sir. You are on Talkback. What's up?
Good morning. Not that Donald Trump would ever care about what people might think or how they might vote. I think one of the things Trump has going in his way is he's only a one-term president now, so he doesn't have to think about what other politicians are going to and what people are going to think, because he's only a one-term president, so he doesn't have to worry about being reelected. And I think that's probably a good thing for him to get things done. He doesn't compromise, which he doesn't really compromise, but he definitely will not have to compromise now. Do you think there's any logic in that, our argument?
Rick, I actually think there's quite a bit of logic in that argument. It's a freeing experience when you can kind of think and say, because at the end of the day, it's like, hey, buddy, you know, you can't see what I'm doing on the air here, but you have the ability, as you just described, Rick, to really focus on your agenda, because you don't have to worry about running again. But just a little kind of caveat to that, if you want your agenda to be implemented and carried through, you do have to be thinking about who comes after you for the next 4 years. Because Peter was saying, while we were at a break, the stroke of a pen, one president takes away the Keystone Pipeline. The next guy that comes in with the stroke of the pen reinstates it. So there is that continuity, which I'm sure is a part of the discussions and the decision-making that will take place. But your basic point's spot on.
Well, another point is I think the Democratic Party has to take a hard look at itself. They've always accused the Republicans of being the party of the wealthy. And Bernie Sanders, he wrote an article and was on the news the other day saying that it's no surprise that the working man has abandoned the Democratic Party because they've abandoned the working man. And during this last few months of them having their rallies and whatnot, was ironic that you would see Donald Trump coming in a garbage truck and wearing a garbage vest, and you would see the Kamala Harris group having some of the richest people in the United States, Oprah, Michelle Obama, Bruce Springsteen, trying to convince people that they needed to vote for Kamala Harris. And they were using their wealth to try to sway the vote. And those people do not understand what it's like to sit at a table when you're trying to budget whether you can afford milk, eggs, or you have to pay for a prescription. And I think the Democrats, they won't take a look at themselves and say, what have we become? My father was a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat. He's passed away years and years ago. But he would never believe what the Democratic Party has turned into. He always said that it was the party of the working man, and that when the Republicans were in, it's always bad for the working man. Well, it's not that way anymore, and that's what my comments are.
So, thank you, Rick. What I'll do is I'll trade you a Springsteen and Oprah for a Musk, because here's a little secret, and it's no secret. Both parties at the top are not made up of Peter, Bob, and Nick. These are wealthy people coming from both sides of the equation. But I can say, I think, with a high degree of surety, if the Democrats are not looking at what you just discussed, Rick, then, I don't know how they're going to reconcile this going forward.
The National Democratic Party has a lot of cleaning up to do, and a lot of introspection to do, right? Because we were counting on the stars, quite literally all the stars, Oprah, et cetera, to usher Kamala Harris into office. It didn't work. The people didn't buy it. And so, now Trump, not exactly a working man, you know what I mean?
No, let's not confuse the stunt of putting on a vest and going to a garbage truck with anything having to do.
Or working at McDonald's.
Right. Yeah. Now, he does love McDonald's. I mean, he does eat what he sells.
Let's get Larry on the line. Larry, good morning, sir. You are on Talkback. What's on your mind?
Good morning. You mentioned Seeley Lake earlier, and when I was a temporary county commissioner back in 2007, we had proposed a tourism tax for Seeley Lake. And I had seen that work in West Yellowstone and Whitefish and other places that had passed that tax. But there was a group in Seeley Lake that just didn't want to see any growth at all. And they managed to get the people to vote that down. Had they passed that, they would have had less demand on the locals to pay for that first stage of the sewer coming into Seeley Lake. And I think what that group didn't foresee was the closure of Pyramid Lumber. Right. Mm-hmm. And no matter how much you want to dream about it, things don't change, don't stay the same. And so now Seeley Lake finds themselves in a place that they don't have any infrastructure, and it'll take years to even get something in if they can get it started now.
So you're I don't know if time will allow us, but we were going to start to talk about some issues that are going to be impacting Montana going forward. But folks, We've had this discussion numerous times. You ain't seen nothing yet. Montana is going through a transformational world of the next 20 years. Eastern, Western, and in between is going to look very different in terms of who's looking at Montana, decisions like you're describing right now. So it's just getting started.
Right, just getting back to City Lake real quick before we take a break. And Larry, thanks for the call. We went out there this past winter, right, to go skiing and snowmobiling and all that. And we went into the local gas station. And I said, how's the winter been? He said, this is the worst winter we've had in years because we are, in his words, 10 feet of snow short of what they ordinarily have during a winter. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, fewer people snowmobiling, fewer people cross-country skiing, fewer people coming to stay, fewer people eating and drinking, all that, and filling up with gas. And no one's to blame for that. It's just simply something that happened. And because they didn't have the variety of things going on in City Lake because of the lack of infrastructure, you can go back and say, if only we had done this and this and this, we might have survived this better.
Your resiliency is reduced substantially.
Yeah. We're up against a break. We'll come right back. We have Jeff, Wingnut, and Catherine all waiting to provide their wisdom to the conversation, and boy, do we need it. We're going to come right back, at least with me anyway. 721-1290 is our number. We'll be right back.
Small businesses are the heart of America. But you don't have to go it alone. As the nation's largest nonprofit resource of expert business mentoring, SCORE has helped millions of entrepreneurs build their businesses for free. Get the connections, education, and guidance you need with SCORE. We're ready to help. Find a mentor today at score.org.
Hey, welcome back to Talk Back. It's Open Phones. Bob Seidenschwartz joining us here this morning from the Montana World Affairs Council. Nick Christensen over there taking your phone calls. I'm Peter Christian, and Jeff has been waiting the longest. Jeff, thank you for holding. Go ahead, sir.
Hey, good morning, all. Good morning, Montana. Two things real quick. You were talking about how both candidates surrounded themselves with wealthy people, and they did. I'm not debating that. I just want to point out that Trump builds things, and he became wealthy by building things. And so did Elon Musk, and so did Vivek Ramaswamy. So these are people who are used to dealing with blue-collar folks and with the intricacies of actually producing something rather than just shows and records and different things. So I think there's a basic difference in who you surround yourself with. The amount of wealth doesn't really matter so much as what their skill set is. And so I think that's one of the big differences. And Bob, you were talking about the what's going to happen in eastern Montana in terms of energy. I agree with you, but with one proviso, and it's a big one, and that's the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, which was the Green New Deal, just renamed. That's all about subsidizing certain kinds of energy, the government picking winners and losers. And I don't think that will succeed. It hasn't succeeded in the past. You've seen things that have been built that are just destroyed. And it needs to be done through the marketplace. And that's the only thing I would stipulate is Gold Strip is a great opportunity. A guy, Greg Gianforte, was talking about the amount of money that's going in there for the east-west grid connection, and that's going to be essential. And if we could bring nuclear in there in small modular reactors or some other sort, that would also be a great boon. And I know that some Montanans have this unhealthy fear of nuclear energy. It's the safest form of energy out there, and I would hold that up. I debate anybody on that. So I agree with your premise that eastern Montana has a huge opportunity to become a national level player in the energy field. They just have to do it smarter, and that's without government intervention and subsidies.
Well, Jeff, the government intervention and subsidies are going to be there in some form. What you may see, though, and this is where I just encourage you, and I just brought this up for your own edification, which is look up that article on Real Clear Politics. Go deeper into it, because one of the battles is over how much of that Inflation Reduction Act should be a part of that equation. And that's where the stresses and the pressures are coming from that are being debated right now. So, you're making an astute observation.
Here's what I read Real Clear every morning.
Yeah.
Real Clear Science is the first thing I read. Next is Real Clear Energy. Sometimes I'll go into the political side, but I am a science and energy nerd. And the key issue here is what's called production tax credits. I don't want to get down on the weeds. But
we don't want to. Go ahead.
You're paying people to have a capability to produce, and it's something like $30 a kilowatt, and it's a ridiculous amount of money. The government pays you to just produce. You don't have to be connected to anything. All you have to do is be able to produce it. And that's the sort of thing I'm talking about is, you can build windmills, you can build solar and get production tax credits out of it and make a profit, but you don't have to be connected to anything. And you have an infrastructure that's vulnerable based on weather and hail damage and snowstorms and sun not shining and no wind and all that kind of stuff. So that's the proviso I would put on them. Get rid of production tax credits and let's see what can live on its own.
Thank you, Jeff.
Jeff, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. All right, let's move on and get Mr. Wingnut. Mr. Nutt, you're on. Go ahead, please.
Good morning. I have to say that Jeff did a valiant job trying to channel me this morning. But let me build on that just a little. I'll admit that my predictive skills aren't anywhere up to the level of Ted's, but I'm going to make a prediction about the Green New Deal money. And before I start, I'd like to make a recommendation. And there's a YouTube channel called Alliance for Responsible Citizenship. And this week, a fellow by the name of Gerard Holland came out with one of their talks about can green energy keep the lights on. And what I think is an excellent job comparing green energy sources and nuclear energy and some of the other energy resources in a 60-year timeline and how they work out for us. And I highly recommend that. Again, that's ARC, Alliance for Responsible Citizenship, Can Green Energy Keep the Lights On? And admittedly, I'm rather pessimistic and even a cynic when it comes to the green energy bill that was passed under the guise of inflation reduction. But I'm going to make two predictions about it. First is you're going to see a flush of projects like this take place as they try to unload this money before Trump comes in. And you're going to see the projects that they fund are turn into boondoggles, largely because the money is... our government just does not do a good job. Secondly, I think you're going to see it is a pass-through for funding democratic resources. That is not uncommon. The unions do it all the time, and they're in a hurry to unload this money. And in large part, it's going to be boondoggle projects and pass-through for democratic financial resources. That's my cynical view this morning.
All right, thanks for the call. Well, we have 1 minute before a break, Bob. Go.
There will be changes to the Inflation Reduction Act. What they will be, yet to be determined. This was also not something of which, when it was first put in place and approved, all the money was going to be sent out. It was going to be over several years.
Right.
So I'm a little bit cautious about how much money can just go right out the door to get that into the hands of various people before Biden leaves office. So just a word of, make sure we get our facts right.
Remember, January 2nd.
Yeah, it's not that far away.
Is when the new term starts.
Right.
And that's not far away, but it's just enough time to scramble and get all your little pet projects funded.
Peter,
okay.
I know
that
sounds like we would like to think they're going to do that because that's who they are.
Okay.
And if I'm wrong, I will apologize on air to everybody.
Me too.
I don't believe that can happen in the manner that it was set up to.
Okay.
as well as how the ability to get that money out, as I shared with you. It's over a long-term period.
Okay, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. 721-1290 is our number, 1-800-568-5309. We're going to get Catherine's call, and hopefully yours as well, when we return right after this. Yeah, we're back on Talkback. 721-1290 is our number, 1-800-568-5309. Got a few minutes left in open phones here this morning, and Catherine has been waiting. Catherine, good morning. Go ahead, please.
Good morning. Trump has indicated that Elon Musk will form or chair a commission for government or on government efficiency. And Musk has reached out to Ron Paul, who has expressed an interest in this, to join him on this project. And Ron Paul has expressed an interest in this, especially concerning the Federal Reserve. Also, they were talking, a lot of people are talking about the possibility of seeing a chainsaw taken to spending in Washington, D.C., somewhat like cuts that the Argentinian President Javier Milei has done. What do you think of that?
I remain dubious until I see it, Catherine. Talk is talk. Let me see the actions. And until you start identifying where you're going to make these cuts and to who and to what lobbies and what individuals or groups, while it sounds very appealing to us, usually it's a nice headline. I wait to see the results.
It would be interesting to find out exactly what power the president actually has in unilaterally going in and funding or cutting or whatever.
And remember something, Catherine, I think you are well aware of this. The budget has been well established going back several years.
Right.
So if we're talking about cuts, it's typically cuts into the future for budgets yet to be determined. So I don't know what authority, when something's already been granted as part of the budget, can that be gone back and cut? I don't know if that's the case. And also in terms of Elon Musk, it just occurred to me when Jeff was talking about subsidies and money being redirected in wrong places. God bless him for what he's doing, but Musk has been the benefactor, or the beneficiary, I should say, of government subsidies to the tune of very substantial amounts of money.
Let's put it this way. SpaceX didn't just happen out of his own pocket.
That's right. You and I are paying for SpaceX, and if it works and it's innovative and it's providing jobs, that's where that relationship sometimes becomes very important in terms of all of our futures.
Catherine, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was going to also ask you, what do you think of the idea of going to zero-based budgeting instead of what we have now, and if that is even possible to do at this juncture?
I'd have to have you explain to me zero-based budgeting to have me make any kind of comment. I'm not aware. I'm not up to speed on that, Catherine.
Zero-based budgeting is when you, right now, agencies, when they are forming a budget, they increase every year the amount that they're asking for, and then towards the end of the year, they spend as much as they possibly can in order to be able to increase it. Zero-based budgeting is cutting everything down to zero, and then they have to basically start at the very beginning again every year so that they are not allowed to carry over.
I draw the parallel between you and I in our homes and what should be the same principles as it governs that type of situation. I can't just say, well, I spent this much this year, I saved some money, so I'm just going to spend that money I saved, because it may not be practical or possible in terms of wage reduction, inflation, any number of different factors. So, I'd like to see a little bit more discipline as well.
And I would say, Catherine, probably better than I do that organizations and things in government are funded by a budget that is set by Congress, and that they get this certain amount of money, and they've probably already have it spent. Right? So it would be difficult to go in there and say, you know what, you're getting too much, we're going to take a little out of here and move this over here. I don't think anybody has the power to do that.
Well, it'd be interesting to try, because I think zero-based budgeting was the way to go, to tell you the truth.
Well, we still have that little monster called the federal deficit, which is growing and has grown no matter who is in power.
Exactly.
So let's see how the new president deals with that going forward. Catherine, thank you.
Thanks for the call. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of the federal deficit, the budget deficit, the federal debt and deficit. I mean, you put them all together, and it spells trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars that we will probably, I'm not sure, and unless we went on a huge crash diet of spending in this country for a multitude years, how we're ever going to get that back.
Little bites, Peter.
Okay.
You can't just eat the whole meal. You have to take little bites to do that. Otherwise, I suspect the economy could come crashing down if it was too severe.
Yeah, well.
And that could happen from outside of the United States. That causes us to have to look at that situation. But that's another story. We got some people coming in.
Yes, we
for
do.
our listeners to ask those questions.
But we do have another minute and a half before our hard break. So, yeah.
So in that minute and a half, I want to give a little shout out on behalf of the Montana World Affairs Council. Nikki Geisler, Executive Director. I came back from Bozeman last week, spent 3 days down there with EconoQuest.
Cool.
This program is
You and I
growing,
did a story about that.
Yes, it is growing by leaps and bounds. It will become, I will make that prediction, which is probably worth that and a cup of coffee. I believe it becomes a critical part of the educational structure in the state of Montana and can be a prototype for other schools in the region. It helps our students connect to that larger world, to understand it's not just about, checkbooks and what's a stock, what's a bond. That's important, but it's really about making them think as what it would take to run a business, the different variables, the different components that go into it. So Nikki spent 1,800 miles of her time and her team's time driving around the state to the farthest corners to let schools and administrators and teachers know about EconoQuest and the resources that we marshaled to be able to bring these kids at no cost to them to Bozeman for that competition.
And if it's anything like WorldQuest, the extremely successful program you guys have had for many years now,
largest in the country,
it's going to be huge. And so we're going to take a break. We have Josh Denny and Rob Richardson joining Bob Seidenschwartz here in the studio. We're going to talk about the economics of what just happened to America in the election. We'll be back.
This is Talkback 721-1290 or 1-800-568-5309.
This is Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290 and 98.3 FM. KGVO, Missoula's news and weather station.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Thursday, November 7th edition of Talkback. Hour number 2 underway, brought to you this morning by Harrington Surgical Supply, where their mission remains the same, and that is to restore confidence and comfort into your daily life. 1, 2, 3 seamless gutters. Now is the time before the snow begins to fall to get your gutters taken care of. Give them a call today, 406-240-2669. They are protecting the foundation of your future. Y West Storage, out at the Y. If you need storage, give them a call today, 406-510-0590. At Y West, we're making room for you. And Phillips Janitorial, if you need your home and or your business clean, nobody does it better. No job's too big or small for them. Call Phillips, 406-260-6617.
The views and opinions expressed on Talkback are not those of the staff, management, or advertisers.
Hey, we are here. It is time for Talkback to continue, and joining us here in the studio this morning, Bob Seidenschwartz still with us, now with SG Long, and of course with the Montana World Affairs Council as well. And his compatriots from SG Long, Josh Denny and Rob Richardson, are both here in the studio with us this morning. So, Bob, the floor is yours, sir. Go ahead.
First, I want to thank you guys for kind of dropping everything, because we were expecting another guest. That didn't happen, and I reached out to Rob, and he called Josh, and I want to say thank you to both of you for taking time away from your busy day and being here. But it's also very apropos, because just yesterday I said, we're having a conversation, and Rob goes, we've been looking at what the effect of a Trump administration economically, what are some of his policies potentially. So from a timing standpoint, couldn't be better. So I'm going to start off with Rob. Please kind of give a little bit of what you and your team were looking at and frame the discussion for us.
Yeah, so I think obviously there's still a lot to be determined as far as like actual policy, but I think there are kind of two main areas you can focus on that have kind of impacts to financial markets and economic things kind of right away, right? That the first being tariffs. So what's the trade policy going to look like? So he's been pretty, we saw it during the last Trump administration, utilized tariffs to try to kind of as a tool for negotiating trade. We think that probably happens again. He's been pretty explicit that he's going to use it again.
Well, he threatened China.
Yeah, exactly.
The 200% tariff on electric cars. Yeah, anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so those kind of things, right? Like, so tariffs are probably one of the top ways that you're going to see an impact to, things in financial markets.
Can he do that unilaterally?
Yeah, so that's like one thing he can do without having sort of congressional control.
Okay, good. So I'm sorry, I interrupted.
The other being one that, and so the second sort of prong there being one that really kind of depends on how the House races across the country play out, right? And there's still a lot kind of to be determined there, but looking like it's at least going to be pretty close. And that being tax policy, the cuts from his last term in office are kind of expiring here this year, so that means something new is going to have to happen. So if we already know that Republicans are going to control the Senate, looking pretty close to controlling the House. So having kind of a sweep in that way certainly would make it easier for any sort of tax agenda to be, actually enacted. So in general, that would be sort of keeping rates lower where they are, maybe even some more cuts. We're
supposed to see some cuts or not today, correct? I mean, isn't the Fed announcing?
Oh, are you talking about rate cuts?
Rate cuts.
Yeah, so tax cuts.
Oh, you're talking about tax rate cuts. Sorry about that, Rob.
Yeah, so right, like this is obviously a pretty densely information-packed week with, one, of course, the election yesterday. Two, there's a Federal Reserve is meeting starting yesterday and today, and we're expecting probably around noon an announcement of what if there's going to be another rate cut. Markets are expecting another 25 basis points in rate cuts this month, and then we're in the middle of earnings season still for the third quarter of the year. So there's lots of companies reporting their quarterly earnings. So just a flood of information to try to sift through to make analysis.
And we are flood junkies. I mean, we love. What would we do if we didn't have weeks like this every week in our business?
I don't know, hang out on a beach?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Now, Josh, I want to bring you in here because Rob mentioned several really important things, starting with what the tariffs are about, because he was pretty bold in saying, I'm going to put tariffs on everything. And you have commented, and Rob has commented in the past, that while it may be getting somebody's attention, historically it's probably not been the best policy, or is it something that can be used on a limited basis from your perspective that can have an effect? But let's just take what he's saying right now, which would be drastic tariffs across the whole spectrum of different products that are imported.
Yeah, I mean, I think Trump and certainly a lot of other presidents, a lot of other politicians sort of, wield a heavy hammer for purposes of negotiation, right? So, some of, I think, what has been said may turn out to be, bluster or exaggeration, perhaps. Tariffs in and of themselves tend to get paid for by the ultimate consumer of the tariffed product. That's true if it's a finished product or a raw material that goes into a finished product. To maintain margins, those tariffs typically get sort of passed down the chain to the eventual consumer, which, in this particular dynamic is inflationary, frankly. And so that'll be a dynamic that we'll watch play out as, presumably some of those supply chains continue to onshore back to the U.S. or away from heavily tariffed countries. Supply chains have already done that to some extent with some products as, they reacted to the sort of original round of tariffs that came out under Trump and were kept largely in place by Biden. So some of that adaptation has already taken place. But that adaptation process takes time. It's not instantaneous. It can be kind of painful for the companies themselves, the consumers in the meantime. There's no way to snap your fingers and bring everything that happens at Taiwan Semiconductor, to Ohio. It's a process that takes, years and many billions of dollars. So it's it's not an immediate thing. It takes time.
We're going to come right back. By the way, the phone lines are open. We have Dave waiting to make a comment or ask a question of our guests. Joining us here, we have shifted gears. We're talking about what's going on with the economy right now, and especially with the big Trump win and how it's going to affect us going forward. Joining us here in the studio, Bob Seidenschwartz, Josh Denny, and Rob Richardson, all from SG Long. And we're going to get Dave's call and hopefully yours when we come back right after this.
Sunny and somewhat mild the next couple of days thanks to a ridge of high pressure that should last into Saturday. Daytime highs reaching in the low to mid 40s. Although with clear skies, mornings will be cold with lows down into the 20s. Saturday will bring increasing high clouds with a 50% chance of rain by Saturday night. And temperatures will warm, so that chance of valley snow showers has disappeared in the latest forecast. Just rain expected now Sunday with highs near 50. More active weather will persist through next week. With the Town Square forecast, I'm Dennis Pratt.
We are back on Talkback. 721-1290 is our number, 1-800-568-5309. The KGVO app also available to you. Josh Denny, Rob Richardson, Bob Seidenschwartz, all from SG Long are here in the studio. And Dave has been waiting quite a while. So, Dave, good morning. What is your question or comment for our guest today?
Yes, people are angry about food prices, but his policies, tariffing food that comes in from the outside country will be hurt by it. On top of that, his desire to get rid of aliens and a lot of them work on farms, having to be replaced with, if possible, with high labor costs. I mean, food prices, I just don't see his policies helping food prices at all. And he had as a president before, he had the highest deficits in any president in history, and it appears with his tax cuts that he's spending policies he's heading for even bigger this time.
All right. Thanks for the call. Gentlemen, your response to Dave's comments.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've sort of seen markets react to that already. I think there's been some chatter in financial markets pricing in a Trump victory for a few weeks now, and that sort of resulted in higher interest rates, right? Because the expectation is that, we're going to see more deficit spending. As Josh mentioned, tariffs are inflationary, right? So that kind of drives interest rates up. So I think that's sort of something the market's been preparing for, is that, those policies are inflationary.
Wait, Rob, I'm confused. We ran on lowering, because the other guy was not taking care of inflation, was running up these deficits, was trying to bring down interest rates. So you're telling me that we're going to bring up interest rates and inflation may be going up because of all the tariffs and our deficits may be exploding? I'm confused.
So here's how
did I run?
I mean, we've talked about this multiple times here before, right? But there really is a dichotomy between efficiency and resiliency.
I'm being cynical.
Yeah, of course.
It's my nature.
So the idea, if you're thinking about like bringing production back to America, improving industry in America, more factories, just more self-sufficient within the United States, which, I think that's probably a good idea.
Everything will cost more.
Yes, but right, like the idea that just is going to cost more because you're going to have to pay American wages.
But I'm not making enough money now.
It just
How can I do that?
Yeah, it's a tough it's a tough position to be in, right?
And I'd add to that too that I think you've even heard people in the political sphere, and I won't call out names, speak to that, to where if we sort of reach the end of the sort of Trump vision for the economy, the interim involves a lot of transition. From getting from A to B. And again, I just kind of want to circle back to before the break and say that that's not going to be a days long or weeks long or months long or arguably years long process. It's going to take time if we do sort of go down that path, and that path is a winding one with lots of challenges.
The one thing we talked about this before you guys got here today, and that is the fact that Donald Trump has an advantage because he's not going to worry about being reelected, right? Because he can't be. This is his second term. That's all he's allowed.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to throw everything he can in there and try to get everything done as quickly as possible, and I think he'd like to look like a hero. in the economy and all the other ways that he campaigned upon, and with these massive crowds, cheering him on.
Peter, and I will defer to my colleagues here, but Josh is really making a very important point that requires listening very carefully. He may be right about what he's trying to do, but in the short to intermediate term, there actually may be more economic pain when we talk about inflation. Yeah. And if we're talking about onshoring, we've brought this up several times, this is going to put a whole different stress and demand upon power production. Where's it going to come from? What's the cost going to be? If that cost is going up because you have more data centers, there's just more demand for industrial purposes, all of that has to be paid for in some capacity. So in the short term, don't expect all glory and flowers here, but the longer term outcome of that may be a stronger industrial base, a more vibrant and resilient electrical and power generating base.
So I think, that's clearly the message that needs to get across, right?
That's right.
If you're going to try to do this, you have to understand that in the short term, at least, at minimum the short term, you're going to pay higher prices.
Yeah, to sort of stretch a metaphor, you can sow all the seeds you want day one. The crop's not going to grow for question mark amount of years.
And how much of that stretch between now and the future when we want to get all these things done, how much of that is going to have to be subsidized and paid for by the taxpayer?
Oh, yeah, a lot, right? Like you're going to have to, in order to make things economical, you're going to have to see deals like subsidies for building semiconductor fabs.
Isn't that happening right now in terms of governmental assistance for the fabs that are going to be in Ohio, in Arizona, and other places they've identified?
Yeah, programs for improving infrastructure, like kind of all that stuff. It's investment within the United States in general. It's certainly going to need to, because like you said, if people are complaining about the price of eggs and that what gets the incumbent party removed, you've got to do something about that, at least in the, addressing it in the short term.
You bet. What Trump has to do is to get the American people to buy into and because he has enormous popularity right now, the rush from the election, people to buy into the plans that he has to make all this go forward, which is going to require a little pain to start with. Am I right or wrong?
Probably. Yeah.
Okay. We're going to come right back. We have Mike waiting to visit with us. Our guest from SG Long here this morning, 721-1290 is our number, 1-800-568-5309. Bob Seidenschwartz, Josh Denny, Rob Richardson, and we'll get Mike's call after we come back after this.
Montana State News Network.
I'm Dennis Bragg. Governor Greg Gianforte is expressing confidence the state can tackle and solve the growing problems with the state's property tax structure. Gianforte took a lot of heat for property tax increases during the campaign, but told us yesterday he's hopeful the state can resolve the issues by making reforms during his second term.
We've got to do permanent property tax relief. I think we can get the tax burden lower so that more people keep more of what they earn. And my goal, as I said last night at the rally in Bozeman, our goal is to make the American dream more attainable for all Montanans. And I think that there's much more that we share in common than separates us.
Senator John Tester says he's planning on putting more energy into his Big Sandy farming operation after being turned out by voters in favor of Tim Sheehy on Tuesday. He says serving has been a blessing.
I'm also blessed because I've got a great family. I'm going to be able to go back to the farm and maybe enlarge it a little bit and really focus on production agriculture and helping my son work on a few cars. But in the end, I just want to say, whether it's my time in the state legislature for 8 really good years, working with some great people there, or the last 18 years working in Washington, D.C. and representing the people of this great state, this truly has been a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
A 52-year-old Miles City woman was killed Tuesday after running off I-94, going airborne twice before coming to a stop. Montana Highway Patrol says the woman's SUV went through the median, crossed the opposing lanes, went over an embankment, and through a fence, where it vaulted a private road and hit the bank, going into the air a second time before stopping. Managers of the Mount View Cemetery in Billings will be doing some armoring to try and prevent further destruction from cars after 30 headstones were damaged earlier this week. 14 monuments were damaged in a similar incident last summer. This is the Montana State News Network.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Tom has been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. And I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. I was really starting to worry.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Hey, welcome back to Talk Back. The gentlemen from SG Long are here in the studio this morning. We're talking politics and the economy, especially with the election just done. Bob Seidenschwartz, Josh Denny, and Rob Richardson are here. And joining us on the phone is Mike. Mike, thank you for holding through the break, sir. What's on your mind?
Oh, good morning, gentlemen. While you were talking, I was watching the broadcast TV channels. That's all I get. I don't have a computer or cell phone. And I was watching Scripps, and I'm sad. I guess I'm losing them November 15th. I guess they can't afford to stay on the broadcast channels. But lucky we have Marissa Giorgio. I don't know if you know her, but she's on America Tonight. She's a Missoula person, but I guess she's Mike Mansfield's granddaughter, or great-granddaughter.
Yep.
Anyway, so but they had a fellow on from ProPublica, and they were talking about Trump claims he champions the blue-collar worker, but they went through all the policies he had last administration, Trump's, and he's no fan of blue-collar. If you look it up there, his policies didn't really help the blue-collar workers. So I'll listen for your comments on the radio.
Thanks for the call, Mike. Gentlemen, go ahead.
Yeah, it's tough, right? You want to pump up American sort of industrial base. It's just a hard thing to do.
If this is true, then why did so many blue-collar workers and blue-collar organizations come out of the woodwork to say, we've got to elect this guy?
I asked them, but I think he's a very effective communicator. And so we'll see how the policy is going to turn out, this round. But
And there's a difference between emotional appeals and sort of policy appeals as well. And I think you can look at that in terms of how it resonates or doesn't resonate from one party or not.
We can talk about sort of in the stock market reaction in the short term, what it has been. And there's clearly been a preference displayed, at least from traders over the last, day and a half, as far as what they think is going to happen, at least in kind of the short.
And Rob, is that still kind of focused on the tech side?
It's the biggest winner. I don't know. So there's a lot of articles being written about this, but what we've seen kind of so far in the markets is financials have done really well. That's banks. With the kind of expectation, like we've said, that you've seen longer term rates go up and you've seen shorter term rates come down. That's generally a pretty good environment for banks. There's also an expectation that the government is going to become less hostile to mergers and acquisitions. which it's been very tight.
Which is a big moneymaker for the people that put these deals together on the banking side.
So you're
right?
talking, like companies buying other companies and things like that. And so the idea there, banks get more fees from doing that. And we've seen that on the tech side, it sort of play out in, kind of software companies, which have been constrained in their ability to purchase competitors over the last few years, which has sort of hampered growth a little bit for them.
That doesn't sound very blue collar to me.
Yeah, that's not blue collar. I'm just trying to think of what we've seen actually kind of like run the last day or two. Health insurers are kind of expected to fare well kind of in this environment. A little bit of industrials. It kind of depends, right? But that's sort of those are kind of the main.
I'll get to a couple of questions on where blue collar people will benefit, but we got a call.
Yes, we have a couple of them actually. Let's get Susan. She's been waiting. Susan, good morning. You're on with our guests. Go ahead, please.
Well, as somebody that grew up, went to high school, and then became a reporter in Washington, D.C., lived there many, many years, blue-collar workers do not feel comfortable in Washington, D.C., and frankly, most people don't, unless you are a corrupt politician. And I will tell you that as a family member of many, many blue-collar workers who did vote for Trump, he absolutely supports the auto industry, which is one of the biggest blue-collar groups of people. And if ever there was somebody that is going to really help not only the auto industry, but every other industry that is a manufacturing company, this is the president, as proven by his previous administration, who is going to help it. And I would guess the guy that just called is going off the talking points of the Democrats, because I happen to be a family member of Democrats who I have heard regurgitate a similar argument after the election, along with very direct swear words about how awful Trump is, which was highly inappropriate language, which of course I will not say. But I will say this: hold on to your seats. We're going to go back to the way we were when Trump was president. And I hope that instead of signing a bunch of executive orders, he works with the now Republican Senate and I think soon to be Republican House, and actually get something done that is permanent relief to the Americans and also closes the border except to people that are legally entering, because my family were immigrants, your family were immigrants. We love immigrants, but we do not love illegal aliens, period. And now I'm going to take my husband to a doctor's appointment. Love you.
Susan, thank you for the call. We're going to have our guests address those issues when we come back. And Jeff is also waiting to bid. The phone lines are open, by the way. If you have a question or comment for our guests, Josh Denny, Rob Richardson, and Bob Seidenschwartz, all from SG Long and Company here in Missoula. We're coming right back after this.
Explore the country.
All right, we're back on Talkback. 721-1290 is our number. We're talking with a gentleman from SG Long, Josh Denny, Rob Richardson, and Bob Seidenschwartz. And Susan's comments, any response to what she had to say?
Yeah, so let's kind of, just focus for a second on the auto industry. I think there certainly has been some discussion on, that President Trump would sort of incentivize American auto companies to, move manufacturing from Mexico back to the United States. The only way that could really happen is that there would have to be some sort of like subsidies involved, right? Because it's just more cost efficient to build it there. Now, this just kind of raises the question again of like strategically, what do we really want? Do we want those things? Like, what's the end goal that we're looking for? If it's prosperity for like more Americans, a broader set of Americans, there can be a lot of ways to get there that don't involve just rolling back and making things look like they did in the past economically, just because things change.
The 1950s aren't coming back.
Yeah, so, but are there ways to make Americans more prosperous? Probably. If I had the answers to all those questions, I probably would be on a beach right now.
Vote for Rob.
Yeah, no, please do not. but it's if we really believe, do we believe in like free markets that where kind of manufacturing goes to the lowest cost environments, or do we want more of a protectionist economy, which is fraught with unintended consequences? So that's really the debate that we're talking about. I mean, the end goal is like, yeah, we want more Americans to be more prosperous. That's sort of the end goal.
Nobody disagrees with that.
How do we get there is a huge question. And nobody really knows like the best way. We've talked about like, oh yeah, I'm a free market like capitalist. Well, if you really are believe in free markets, then you would understand or expect that manufacturing goes to the lowest cost centers, and like that in turn is better for us, and people learn different jobs. It's just, there's a lot of trade-offs here.
We're going to go right. Let's go right to the phones and get Jeff on the line. Jeff has been waiting. Jeff, good morning. You're on Talkback with our guests. Go ahead, please, sir.
Hey, good morning again, Rob. Rob, Bob, you talked earlier and mentioned something about it's going to be difficult to spend this money before Trump takes office, and I heard it's 75 days from today is when transition takes place, and people need to know that when Congress appropriates money, and it is Congress that appropriates, it just doesn't give like $3 billion to the Defense Department to go here. Congress plays an integral part because they have constituents and they have all their cronies and all their lobbyists who want their share of the pie. And so that money gets divided up into what's called colors of money. They're done for different things. And in the Air Force, I'm just going to go real briefly, we had like a different kind of money for operations and maintenance than we did for acquisition or for research or for building things. And each of those came with different stipulations. But with each of them, you have a dual-step process. You have obligation and commitment. Once you obligate the money, you have said, here's how I intend to spend it, and they can't take it back from you. If you haven't obligated your money, they can pull it back. But if you say, I've obligated this money to this contractor for this process over this many years, it's effectively spent. And then when you commit it, you actually submit the check to have it drawn out of the Treasury. So they can absolutely obligate a whole bunch of money in the next 75 days without having to actually write the checks. So that's something that people need to understand. And the second thing is, I'm a firm believer in the market economy, but I would agree there is no such thing as a free market. And the reason there is no free market, one of the reasons, is because of cronyism. And I alluded to it earlier, but cronyism is going to be the big part of this whole thing. You're going to have all sorts of lobbies in D.C. spending millions and maybe even billions of dollars asking the Congress, and it is going to be Congress. The president doesn't appropriate any money. It's Congress that does. And they're going to have the willpower to say no to their cronies. And that's going to be the big culture change here. It's not going to be, well, how do we cut this or how do we cut that? Part of the lobbying is going to be done by government bureaucrats, too. Oh, my agency is too important to have any cuts. So the market is never free because of human greed. And so you have to have protections against cronyism. And that's under Marxism, that's under free markets, that's under socialism, whatever. But it's the cronies who destroy the freedom of the market in large part. And that's what's going to be difficult, because all the cronies are going to be out there now going, hey, obligate my money. And the government's going to be more than happy, under Biden, is going to be more than happy to oblige. And that's going to be what you have to watch out for.
Okay, so, Jeff, thanks.
I wasn't too much in the weeds on that.
Thanks for the call. Let's get we got about 2.5 minutes for you gentlemen to address that point. So go ahead, gentlemen, please.
I mean, I would think cronyism and lobbying and constituency, right, those are nonpartisan things. It happens on both sides.
Anything else?
It's just different flavors.
For decades.
Yeah.
All right.
For centuries.
Yeah. All right. Well,
from the beginning of time.
Then let's get another call in. This is Ed. Ed is standing by. Ed, good morning. You're on Talkback with our guests. Go ahead, please.
Yes, people have brought up the point that Trump might not
favor the blue-collar worker or help the blue-collar worker. I'm not a worker anymore. I'm retired. And Mrs. Ed and I are retired on a couple small pensions and Social Security. And when the Trump tax cuts hit, our taxes went down $1,400. Okay, and I graphed it out. It was creeping up, and then dropped down $1,400, and has continued to creep up. It wasn't recovered again, right away. And over 7 years, that $1,400 has saved us about $10,000 in taxes, and that impresses me. And as a small a small guy here, I'm all for the tax cuts that Trump put in, and I think most of it was in a much larger standard deduction. I think that's what helped us here. But they didn't just help the billionaires. They affected our income also.
Ed, thanks for the call, gentlemen. Your thoughts?
Trump has talked about not taxing Social Security. And that's been a maybe actually bipartisan type of approach. So it's been said even before the election that, hey, it's kind of like a double taxation. You had these taxes deducted out of your paycheck, you pay those taxes, and now you're getting taxed again for your retirement. So that could be a major boom for spending in the consumer side if Social Security, but if you don't tax SS, then where do you make it up somewhere else?
Especially for those on fixed incomes.
Right.
That's, in inflationary environments, those on fixed incomes are those that are sort of hurt the worst.
So do you say then anybody making still or over 100,000, your SS is still taxed if you're under? So it's an interesting proposal. Let's see if it goes someplace.
Yeah, I mean, tax, we mentioned at the beginning, tax cuts and, trade relations are sort of the two main ways that this administration can impact, the economics or your pocketbook directly.
Mm-hmm. Which is why he was voted in primarily.
Yeah.
Is on the economic issues. And we are being signaled.
Yes,
we need to go to a break.
It's time for a break, and we have
somebody's got to pay for these subsidies.
That's exactly right. Thank you. It's about time you got 721-1290 is our number. Somebody's got to make a buck around here. 721-1290 is our number. Our guest from SG Long will remain with us until 10 o'clock this morning, and we have Dave waiting on the line. We'll be right back with hopefully your calls and your text messages as well on the KGVO app when we come back after this.
Hey, guess what?
Hi, I'm Carson Kressley. Of all the resources in the world, kindness is the most precious. For more than 140 years, American Humane has been working to protect animals in disasters, on farms, on the silver screen, and in zoos and aquariums caring for the world's vanishing creatures. You can help too by making humane choices every day. Visit AmericanHumane.org for simple ways to build a more caring and compassionate world. For all of us.
We are back. This is Talkback, 721-1290. That's our number, 1-800-568-5309. Nick Christensen taking your phone calls this morning. Our guests from SG Long are Josh Denny, Rob Richardson, and Bob Seidenschwartz. And Dave is back with us. Dave, good morning. You're on. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, about Social Security. I've been told by the experts that Social Security fund will run out of money in 9 years. But at present rate. But if Trump takes money out of the Social Security fund by not taxing retirees, the fund will run less. It'll be less time, sooner by at least a year. So, you either take your money out now or you take your money out later. It's sort of like the 401k plan. Pull your money out now or wait until later to use it. So, there's a price to be paid for less taxes.
So, Dave, you may have heard our conversation when we were going to break, because we had said if they do this, then the revenue lost from that has to be made up in some other capacity, right?
Or you deficit spend.
Or you deficit spend. So this whole conversation, which I have loved, is the paradoxes of when we do A, then B, then C and D. So I hope people are listening closely and going, yeah, got to think about this a little bit more. Go ahead, Josh.
There's only things that sound like magic bullets.
Yes.
There are no magic bullets.
Right.
So I read something the other day that kind of illuminated a concept I don't think I'd put together in my mind, right? But so there's the idea that, in the past, a lot of Americans' retirements or some, like there was much more pension plans, right? So we would call that a defined benefit. So you work for like a certain number of years, you get a defined benefit from the company that your pension pays you, whatever amount it is monthly, right? And so over the last several decades, so that's shifted to more defined contribution plans, meaning instead of saying, a company saying instead of, at the end of 20 years, we'll pay you whatever, $5,000 a month or whatever it is, we'll put in a certain percentage of your paycheck every month to sort of match what you put in every month. So they're giving you that cash up front. That's then invested, right? So there's this sort of like social contract or expectation that in order to sort of fund all of our retirements, that we have to be invested in the markets, which means that markets need to go up in order for us to be able to fund our retirements.
And markets go up when corporations are profitable.
Yeah, so we're getting down to that point, right, of like, so in order for that to happen, that means that companies need to sort of like squeeze all the efficiency they can out of their results in order to increase their value over time. So that means they got to control their costs, both labor costs and production costs.
So I move my production to Mexico,
right,
to reduce my costs, and then I bring it back to the U.S. for this woman in Arkansas to fix all the machines that aren't as functional as when they were produced here. So now I'm really confused.
So if you've got this retirement savings, but you want production to come back to America, how do we do that in a way that also still allows the company to remain profitable, to continue growing, to sort of boost asset prices so that we all have like these nest eggs for retirement, when it comes time? That's a very difficult question.
Subsidies, otherwise known as tax dollars.
Okay, we do have another caller. Let's and the phone's still ringing, so let's get Kevin on first. Kevin, good morning, sir. You are on Talk Back with our guest. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, it's been an interesting conversation, but the one thing I've not heard about, if Trump can do it, is to streamline and make government more efficient. There's plenty of taxes paid to the government, but the inefficiencies of government, if they're corrected, can make up any other dollars that we're talking about that we need. The inefficiency of government needs to be brought forth and taken care of. That'll give us plenty of money.
I mean, I certainly think it's incredibly important for the government to efficiently and appropriately use the funds that they collect through tax dollars. I think that's a given. I think we all know that, there's definitely inefficiencies in Washington. And bureaucracy in general is just an inefficient form of organization.
A private company, right, by Elon Musk, has done things that NASA couldn't even dream of doing. Right. And he was using his own money. Of course, a lot of subsidies there. I understand there's all that. But primarily, it's his own money that he's put at stake. And so President Trump is saying, I'm going to put this guy in charge of government efficiency. And I'm just wondering your thoughts about that.
Yeah, certainly. I think Elon Musk has done some pretty.
With SpaceX,
he puts his money at risk and is willing to sort of go all in on things. And as you mentioned, there certainly have been subsidies, but like the results have been pretty crazy. Does that apply to? Can you just take that system and apply it to the government? Like, I don't think so.
The bureaucrats are going to have a field day with him, and he's going to have to. How does he do that and still maintain his presence with us? That's a conflict of interest in a major fashion, because he can be saying, you're not doing this, and then putting this out there publicly in the media that he uses. I can see massive issues in terms of him either having to divest himself.
Conflicts of interest.
Conflicts of interest.
Yeah. I mean, I would certainly love to see more government, like efficiency in the government. Like how it happens, I have no clue.
Right.
Gentlemen, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We have Kevin and Dale both waiting. We're going to this is a 1 minute timeout. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nick. You want to take? No. Okay, we'll be right back after this. We're trying to solve the economic problems of the world in a 60-second spot break. Anyway, 721-1290 is our number. Let's get another caller on the line. Dale, first of all, thank you so much for calling, sir. What's on your mind?
Hi, this is Dale. You hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, please.
All right, great. To the caller that was asked about Social Security, there is no way Social Security is ever going to go away. And I guarantee you when Elon Musk goes in and opens up the hood and sees all the waste in there, there's got to be trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars of waste in there. But my real question is, can Trump go in and can they go and put together a bill individually, one bill at a time with no earmarks and just pump them one after another after another? Is that possible?
So no omnibus bills?
I mean, that'd be a marked departure from...
Yeah, those get added typically in the congressional process. So the question is not, can Trump do it? The question is, can the House of Representatives help themselves? Typically.
Yeah, or the Senate, or just whoever's like writing the bills, right? Like,
right, yeah.
I mean, that'd be a drastic departure from the way things are done.
Right. So it's a lot of discipline would have to be exercised by a lot of people.
If you remember way back when, because I'm old, okay, when all 435 members of Congress had to be there for every bill to vote on it, as opposed to an omnibus bill where people are off doing junkets and vacations and whatever, and they put all this stuff into one gigantic bill, and it's already been passed. Boom, it's just rubber stamped. To me, Congress is not doing their job when they're doing that. They're supposed to be there to be making laws, or am I just being naive?
Well, when was the last time Congress actually set a budget?
So, and I don't know how much this comes into the equation. Several years ago, I'm back in D.C., and I visited Mr. Tester and Mr. Daines. And I asked them, how much time do you have to spend campaigning, even after your election, for the 6 years?
Right.
Way, way, way too much time has to be spent on meeting lobbyists, raising money for the next campaign that just barely got done.
It's even worse for a congressman.
And it's even worse for a congressman. Right. So I don't know where you start to change that equation.
Let's get Walt on the line. Don't like to keep our callers waiting. Walt, good morning. You're on Talkback with our guest. Go ahead, please, sir.
Well, good morning, everyone, and I'd like to do a few comments. There was a comment made, I think, by Bob about Congress and the bureaucracy having a field day with Musk. I have the opposite view. I think Musk will have a field day with those critters. And the reason is...
Well, tell me why.
Well, if you understand where Musk comes from, he has no fear. And when I say no fear, I really mean it. The way he was brought up and the unfortunate incidents in his life, he had an abusive father, both physically and emotionally. When he was in grade school, some kids in his class beat the snot out of him, and he was in the hospital for a week. And he is willing to take risks that nobody else would even think of. So when he is asked to come in and cut the snot and the excess and the fat and the blubber out of our over-bloated government that I kind of like to nickname Jabba the Hutt, I think he has a good shot at it. Yeah, he's going to be resisted against, just like Trump's been resisted against. And I'm not going to say this is going to happen, that Musk will have a field day with the government, but I think he's got a better shot at it than anybody else on the planet.
Well, do you think he needs to divest himself from X if he does this?
What's that?
Do you think he needs to divest his interest from X if he is appointed to the position you're describing?
No. And the reason why is he would be hired as an independent contractor, kind of like the second person that tried to assassinate Trump. He was hired as an independent contractor for some government agency in years gone back. And that way you can have the government sponsor bad actions and wipe their hands clean of it because, well, that person wasn't an employee, but he was an independent contractor. So there's a lot of ways that can be dealt with. We, from our perspective, because I know you're investment people, you're regulated, I'm regulated, we're over-regulated. And so we have to act accordingly. But there's no reason. The biggest problem that I see, and my question to you is, can the government cut back on its spending if it has the will and if the leadership has the will? And I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, thanks, Walt. We have about 2.5 minutes, gentlemen. Go ahead. Rob, Josh, and Bob.
Yeah, so I think the biggest question to me on this is, can Elon Musk come in and cut like 75% of the employees of the government like he did at Twitter? Like, I don't think that's possible. So, I don't think the
civil service.
Yeah, like you can't, those jobs are a lot more protected than.
It's a protected class.
Than like a software designer at Twitter. So it's not as simple as just coming in and say, all right, we're just going to like clean house. Like it's not legally possible.
Right.
Yeah, you can. I think you can cut costs. It's the extent to which you can cut costs that is the question, and perhaps has been exaggerated greatly in some of the rhetoric that we might have heard.
You mean campaign rhetoric? Are you that couldn't possibly happen?
It's never happened before. I don't know.
All right, gentlemen, we have about a minute and a half left. So, any final thoughts, each of you, to tell us where we're going from here, from your perspective as financial counselors?
Yeah, so I think the markets have sort of given us some clear direction over the last couple of days of what it thinks is going to happen. I think a lot of that time that can be reactionary. What we've seen is a lot of uncertainty has come out of the market this week. Kind of leading in, there was, maybe some expectations that we wouldn't know who was going to be president for several days or maybe even longer. And that was clearly not the case. And so that took sort of a weight off the market as far as this unknown future, right? So things are a little bit more certain. We have like some direction. The details of that direction are still to be determined, I think. So things are going to like change. But what we've seen so far is just sort of I don't know, like a weight being lifted as far as something holding back decisions being made in the markets.
30 seconds from Josh.
Yeah, it's often been said, and this is not, recently, it was said for, years and decades, that markets typically prefer gridlock. Because that means nothing really changes, and it's a static business planning
gridlock
environment. Gridlock in the government, correct. Sudden moves scare markets, so we'll see.
Gentlemen, thank you for sharing your expertise with us. We appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time out of your day. We appreciate it. All right, so Mr. Nick, it's up to you, sir. Tell us what's going on tomorrow's fabulous program, sir.
We'll be on from 9 to 10, and we will have City Talk.
City Talk. All right, so Jenny Miriam, the communications director for the city, will bring a special guest with her to talk about all sorts of things with when it pertains to the city of Missoula. So your phone call is going to be most welcome during City Talk. But before that, it'll be Hunter's Breakfast, live from Paradise Falls with the captain and his crew. Get out there and make it a great day, everybody. Enjoy the sunshine while we have it. See you tomorrow.